All right, Mike. Welcome back. So this is the segment 2, and here we'd be talking about strategies for alignment and optimization. And again, thank you so much for walking us through the approval workflow as well as the organizational dynamics in the last section. So to delve deeper into this segment, Mike, I'd want to ask you that what strategies do you recommend for designing approval workflows that align with the organization's hierarchical structures?
Okay, thank you. So organizational hierarchy, before we develop the workflow, one of the things, as I said in my previous session, that we need to align, first of all, organizational objectives, because that's one of the key things. And after that, we need to create what's the organization hierarchy that includes the reporting line, level of authority, and then other training and documentation. At the same time, how it will impact the decision-making process, along with the considering efficiency, collaboration within the department. So I can give you some of the strategy how we can keep this workflow developed. First of all, we need to make sure we can keep the proper reporting line. So who reports to whom? That's the key thing for the hierarchy. Because the workflow, if you are going from one step to other step and how hierarchy we are going to develop, and that's it's a reporting line, a reporting structure is very important. At the same time, while developing the workflow, we need to also figure out what level of authority we need to give it to each, because we don't want to give every hierarchy to report, like manager to senior manager. So we can develop that what are the authority or limit or level of the authority every position has it. And based on that, you create the workflow. Then also need to have clarity of the roles and responsibility. Who's approving, what their role would be, and why they are involved in the workflow. Because we don't want to involve everybody because you're a manager or director. You don't want to be involved for the workflow approval. We need to define what this person's roles and responsibility would be in this specific workflow process. And based on once we clarify the roles and responsibility, that will help to develop the workflow. And also another thing, as I said before, establishing the approval level, because we have to establish what approval level we need to focus, how they want to approve it, and how we can keep track of the approval via proper audit trail. So that is also, we need key things on the hierarchy level. The other thing would be we need to standardize the approval process. As we discussed in the previous session, that how is a company is a decentralized organization, we need to standardize the approval process where how we can have a centralized organization where we have a systematic approval process, decentralize what the approval process should be, where it needs to be done, and what process needs to be focused on. The other thing we need to focus in utilizing the tool, what tool we are using it for the workflow, whether we are using the workflow management systems or any other tool, or are we going to have AI to be introduced for the workflow solution. And then the other thing we need to consider is providing the proper training and support, because whatever the workflow you develop, the people who are approving, they do not have proper training on the whatever the tool they are using it or what the system they are using it. The process would be inefficient and it will take a lot more time and it will impact delay the decision making process as well as the approval process. And then last but not least is like our proper collaboration and coordination that we need to have, making sure that all cross-functional departments have proper collaboration and coordination. And then we need one more thing we need to develop is we need to get the proper accountability. The people who are approving the report, workflow, they have proper responsibility, accountability, and authority to approve it, and also needs to be traced by the making sure that whether proper accountability has been done, people have been approved properly, and then whosoever is responsible is also monitoring the workflow process also that whether it's been done properly or not. All those things, and then last but not least, we need to make sure all those things, as I said before, it has to be aligned with the organizational objective and not any specific department objective. So that's pretty much how I would say the strategies we need to use to develop the proper workflow based on the organizational hierarchy.
Got it. Got it. So, Mike, how do you strike a balance between centralizing control for oversight and decentralizing, decision making authority in approval workflow?
So striking a balance between the centralizing control for oversight and decentralized decision making authority in the approval workflow is essential for optimizing efficiency, maintaining the accountability, and fostering the innovation within an organization. So some of the strategy what we need to use to achieve this balance effectively is one is that like some of the things define the clear hierarchy. So establish the clear hierarchy reporting level that who's approving it, whether the centralized, whether the decision is making centralized or decision is making decentralized with a centralized oversight on that. That's one of the things we need to identify. And also identify the key decision points that will help to determine what level of authority you require to approve the workflow. So as I said, we need to identify the critical decision points. What are those things? Where the centralized decision has been made, but there are some of the decentralized organization who is approving, who are the responsible for making the decision. For give example of that, that if marketing department has approved, but whether it's been they have right to approve the budget or what are the things they can approve versus what that cross-functional collaboration require. Also, they need to focus whether on the workflow, whether there is a regulatory compliance check is there or not, and whether there is like any other project which require like some of the milestone to be achieved, and how at what stage milestone to be achieved, at what workflow stage we need to create. And this is not more focusing from the expense type of workflow, but this is more on the business process workflow. I'm giving an example of that. Another thing we need to focus in the strategy is the decision of delegate the authority appropriately. So what is the decision-making authority at the lower level versus higher level authorities? There are some of the routine tasks can be given at the like lower to mid level. Some of the key critical tasks, it has to go on the higher level. So empowering the employee for the necessary with the necessary training and tool, they can delegate what the delegation of the authority they need to focus on, and they can make the informed decision with all this proper training. The establish the escalation protocol is one of the other important thing you need to focus. That why what is the proper escalation protocol? If somebody has made a decentralization decision making is there, what is the next step? If some question has been asked or some of the things which is beyond their authority, what is the next escalation path we need to focus? That's also one of the consideration when a criteria for the decision making, and we need to consider while developing the workflow. And then other thing what we need to focus is utilizing the technology and transparency. Implementing the technology solutions such as workflow management systems or collaborative platform can provide the transparency into the approval workflow. We need to make sure ensure that all stakeholders are being looped for this technology solution, and they are aware of this technology, and they know proper access level, proper approval levels. In that way, technology can be used efficiently for developing the workflow. And then also, as I discussed before, cross-functional collaboration is very important for creating the any workflow, because workflow is not dependent on any single department or single group. So cross-functional communication collaboration is important, as well as the training and documentation is also important for the workflow. These are the pretty much we need to focus the balancing the centralizing the control versus the creating the workflow on the decentralizing decision making.
Got it, Mike. So, how can organizations ensure that approval workflows are flexible enough to accommodate changes in the organizational hierarchy? How can organizations ensure that approval workflows are flexible enough to accommodate changes in the organizational hierarchy?
So approval of the workflow should remain flexible in order to accommodate the changes in the organization hierarchy, and which is a very crucial for maintaining the efficient operational efficiency and create the decision making faster. So few strategies or few examples I can give you how we workflow could be more flexible. Number one, the design of the workflow should be in a modular fashion. So it can be very flexible. So whenever you want to make any changes, it has to be, it does not have to go through the so many steps or so many bureaucracy type of thing to approve. So each stage, so we don't have to have complete, if you want to make some changes within the workflow, each stage should be modular to make it flexible versus having the changing the complete workflow. So we need to be very modular enough to change the design. The second thing who should be, as I said before, it should be implement the role-based approval and not the individual-based approval. So whenever the people changing the job, the role-based approval is still there, and it can be without changing any workflow. People can change the organization or change the job, and workflow will not be impacted. Another thing should be a dynamic routing. What I mean to say dynamic routing is that when we create the workflow, the routing should go based on the role base. But what happens if somebody is out on vacation? Then that way, the workflow, we don't want the company to wait for that person to come back, or if person is traveling, we don't want that person to come back and approve the workflow. So we need to create pretty dynamic routing where person can delegate or give authority to someone as a proxy for that person to work, to approve the workflow. In that way, it will not create bottlenecks, and the workflow can be done when person is out of the office. The other one would be a centralized policy management, because they're centralized, the people needs to maintain the, though workflow is dynamic, the policy should be centralized, and making sure that people are following the policy. It's been well documented and well communicated. And the last thing we need to focus in we need to review the workflow and monitor whether all those flows are going properly. Is the flexibility is enough that thing? Any changes we need to require and organize the workflow should be very dynamic in a way that whenever we identify any areas where we want to make any changes, that change should be easily done and may be done effectively without any disruption of the operations.
Got it. So, Mike, how can organizations leverage technology to automate routine approval tasks and streamline workflows? And it would be great if you can share a few examples as well.
Yeah. So before any organization will look what the technology can, how the technology can leverage, they need to understand what is the current processes. Identify whether what the process require any changes or how the technology is going to help. They need to research what are the technology tools available, and then select what the right technology would be. And after that, they can implement the technology. So to leverage the technology, you need to do some homework before rather than just jumping on the technology. Now, there are so many other types of technology you can leverage, and I can give you some of the example. One of the thing would be a workflow management system. So workflow management system is a robust workflow management system that allows the organization to automate the routing for the workflow and then keep the track of the progress of that every step. In a real time, it enforces the processes. I think I'm reading it too much. Sorry. Let's do it again, please.
Okay. Yeah, no problem.
It's too much wordful. I don't need to do all those things.
That's okay. There will be
1 second.
So can we start?
Yeah.
Okay. So, Mike, how can organizations leverage technology to automate routine approval tasks and streamline workflows? And it would be great if you can share a few examples as well.
So before leveraging any technology in the workflow, first of all, organization needs to figure out what is the current process, how the technology can be implemented on the current process, what are the identify any areas for we need to have leverage the technology or any improvement required. And then after that, considering all those things, we need to select the technology, which technology is right for the company, and after that, there's the implementation of the technology. So to leverage the technology, there are few tools that can be used effectively for the workflow. One is the workflow management system. that will create this or create the automated workflow management, where it will create where the approval is there and what to track the approval, what stage the approval would be. So that workflow management system can be customizable. It will
Hmm.
provide the notification as well. It has a reporting capability and enable the organization to streamline and automate the workflow processes. Other thing is electronic document system. So using the electronic documentation system, which avoid to save the data at one place and create the workflow when you can create the storage properly, version control properly, and workflow can be developed based on the electronic data versus having a manual intervention. The other thing would be like electronic signature. Now, with some of the electronic signatures considered as a legal tool to approve the workflow, instead of pushing the paper, there are if the company has no good technology like a workflow management system or any other tool, they can still use the electronic signature by routing the workflow to one place to other, and that can create the technology on enabling some of the leveraging the technology. The other one would be how the workflow is integrated with your ERP system, because there are quite a few times the company may have add-on tool or any other add-on processes, but ultimately it has to integrate with the ERP system to make sure that all those data has been like all involved with the ERP system and making sure that ERP has been getting the data from the workflow or workflow is getting the data from the ERP. So that is a very key important thing on workflow management system. The other one would be what current trend is going on is AI and machine learning. So workflow can be add on as an AI tool, and an AI solution can provide the good workflow if the ERP cannot provide the work. Let's say example of the purchase order. In my previous session, I talk about the ERP and the AI, where there are big company has a big ERP system and they have a good workflow system and they do not need AI versus the add-on solution for the small and medium-sized business where they have second tier or third tier ERP, which they do not have those capability. AI and machine learning can help us to create the automate the process. The other one is like mobile accessibility. There's another because people wants to get the approval through the mobile versus getting through the login to the system and get the approval. So that's also type mobile technology can be used. And then last but not least is a self-service portal where you can have people can sign on the self-service portal and approve the processes. So there are so many technologies. So these are the more I'm focusing on the strategy as an example, but there are so many tools and solutions available in the market where people can use based on their requirement and what's their need and how they can integrate with their ERP systems.
Got it.